Part 1 of the report deals with SAA, the new Age and SARS. Let's look at the findings and evidence around the South African Revenue Service with Scorpio investigative journalist Pauli Van Wyk. Pauli, good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Let's talk about, the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. When it looked into the South African Revenue Service, some people were worried that it was going to duplicate the work that was done by the Nugent Commission. But when you read the Commission's report, you can see that they did not seek to overturn or duplicate some of the work that has already been done by the Nugent Commission. I wonder, what does this then mean for the South African Revenue Service now?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So that is a fair summary. The Nugent Commission that you are referring to, that did the first investigation into SARS, looked at broadly systemic failures at SARS, who was at fault and how to fix it. Now, the Zondo Commission looked at the state capture project. So they asked themselves the question, was SARS captured like other state departments and state organs were, and who was involved? Now, the recommendations and findings clearly showed that the team and Justice Zondo did think that SARS was captured. They specifically named former President Jacob Zuma and the former Commissioner Moyane as the main culprits, who colluded with a private USA-based company named Bain and Company. And they were all connected by a still mysterious person, Dumakan Ndlovu, who was a playwright and the owner of a management company, who played this mysterious and strange role in the former president's life, including to be his spiritual advisor. And though they say that the three of them, including Bain, ensured that SARS was captured and that a lot of knowledgeable and senior people were ousted, and that compliant, blind people were injected into SARS. Now, in the end, Mr. Moyane, as you mentioned, is supposed to be charged with perjury for lying to Parliament. All of Bain's reports and contracts with other government institutions should be reviewed. And it's also suggested that the SARS Act must be amended in terms of how the commissioner would be chosen going on.
And Pauli, right at that point, the report also talks about how important the work of the NPA and the SAPS is going to be when it comes to looking at some of these contracts that Bain and Company then has. I wonder how much of capacity do these two institutions have to actually look at this, because there have been concerns around the investigations and the pace at which some of the most critical cases are going.
You're putting your finger right on a very sensitive point, because the Nugent Commission already recommended that the Hawks and the prosecuting authority look into the wrongdoing at SARS, which included, of course, the Bain contracts, but it also included contracts going to Patrick Monyeki, a friend of Mr. Moyane. Now, the problem is that exactly what you're saying. Do they have the capacity? Do they have the political will to actually go and investigate? Are they snowed under? Because there's so much here. And perjury charges against Mr. Moyane is really the least of his problems.
And, Pauli, when one also reads the report, you also cannot help but go back to that moment when Athol Williams was testifying and Bain wanting to come in and cross-examine him, but then they decided to abandon that mission. And the report seeks to suggest that it's because they may not have wanted to almost like full disclosure and tell us exactly what happened here. It's going to be problematic going forward that we still do not know the full story around Bain and Company.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was very clear from evidence and emails, especially internal emails, that Bain and Company colluded with Moyane and with President Jacob Zuma, that Bain had met at least 17 times with the former president to discuss changes at SARS, changes at the ANC itself, the party structures, and trying to overhaul the entire of government. So Bain, on the one hand, positioned itself to really overhaul the entire South African system and its pillars. And in the second instance, Mr. Zuma tried to position himself in such a way that he could grab hold of the entire government, because one of the pertinent examples of what Bain was busy doing was to set up kind of a procurement body that only reported to the president, and they would have made this some sort of a president's project where they would have circumvented certain procurement requirements, and they would have circumvented any of the restraints that some of the ministers and some of the DGs of certain ministerial capacities would have held over some contracts. So you could just imagine, with the benefit of hindsight, what would have happened if Bain was successful there. So what I also find pertinent is that this was one of the very singular times where it was very clear that Mr. Zuma took a personal direct interest in what happened at SARS, and that he meddled directly in what was happening and what was supposed to happen months even before he appointed Mr. Moyane. And one of the pertinent examples were that Mr. Moyane was informed by Mr. Zuma that he would be the new commissioner about 10 to 9 months before the actual appointment would be made. And all of that just shows that the entire system at SARS were captured and re-evaluated, broken, changed, and reverted to what sorted and what assisted the president and Mr. Moyane, as opposed to what assisted and propped up the government and South Africans.
And one of the things that, Pauli, is quite evident is also what the report talks about, the destruction, if I may use that word, of the management structure. And one thinks back to the Nugent Commission, when we had one Mamate, who Makuane Makeke, who had come, and she was occupying a critical position when it comes to IT at SARS, but we could not make head or tail of what she was saying during her evidence. Now, when you look at this, and against the backdrop of what Mr. Moyane then said at the wrapping up of that Nugent Commission, saying that he didn't take those findings very seriously, I wonder how seriously should he be taking these findings of this particular commission, because this is the second one now to find that there was serious wrong things happening at SARS.
No, absolutely. Well, we've known for quite a while that Mr. Moyane lives in a parallel universe, and he's with his testimony before Justice Zondo. He actually just confirmed that, because he's so far removed from the fact of a matter until he's forced to acknowledge black on white that a fact is a fact. It's very difficult for him to view reality as the rest of us do. That point number one. An example of that would be how he used a rogue unit rumor to initiate change. And as you just said, he fired his entire executive committee on the first day of finding out that there is this rumor. It was as if he was waiting for some sort of excuse to make sweeping changes. And the findings in the Nugent Commission, but as well as in the Zondo Commission, just shows that this rogue unit humor was a complete ruse, that it was used to initiate the restructuring and the deliberate weakening, and that Mr. Moyane was initiating a climate of fear and bullying. Now, towards your point of how worried should he be about his actions and certain repercussions following, is it takes us right back to your point about the prosecuting authority and the Hawks. How worried should Mr. Moyane or any of the state captor actors be with the current situation relating to the Hawks and the prosecuting authority? If the Nugent Commission already about 3 years ago said that the Bain and Company and certain people should be prosecuted, and the NPA did nothing about it yet, where does that leave South Africans?
All right. Pauli, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much, though, for your time this afternoon.